So this is phase one of our CPD courses. What we're doing at the moment is sending all of our team members out on CPD trips. So Steve has obviously done a strength conditioning coach course before. He's also a level 3 personal trainer, special interest in making sure that his clients are making sustainable behavioural changes, but as well as that specialist interest in sports outcomes. So today, Steve, you're going to be talking to the pain team, but also the whole team, because we're obviously recording this for widespread use, on how we can help people to become stronger, better conditioned versions of themselves and assess them for the benefit of self.
Exactly that. So, just to start before we kind of go into it, I made a little note. If any of you have got some real in-depth questions, write them down, give them to the end. What I will then do is I can then, we'll have discussions as we're going, but then I will take those questions away, and then I'll put together maybe a 10-15 minute little presentation for yourselves based on those things as well. And then again, essentially create our own little library based on what you guys come up with. So, strength conditioning, what is it? In essence, the selection and development of dynamic and static exercises used to improve physical performance and reduce the chances of injury. So the term strength conditioning, you'll see thrown about all over the place, without really any specific kind of idea of what it is. A lot of people say, okay, well, strength conditioning, it's running around, it's lifting weights. In essence, that's part of it. There's so many more layers to what it is. Is it just directed towards athletes? No. I think my personal belief is it can be used across the board. If you have people, for myself as a personal training clients, they might not have athletic goals, but why can't they develop themselves to the level of what an athlete would attempt to? Why do we not want to be the best parts of ourselves? So, primary objectives of a strength conditioning coach. I'll reel them out, as I said, if there's any questions, and obviously we can get into discussions about it. So, some of the primary objectives. So, to increase the performance of each required performance quality needed within the athlete's chosen sport. So, for example, vertical jump, height in basketball players, push power, rugby players, something like that. All right. To prevent injuries in athletes by identifying and reducing potential high risk factors, so loss of torso integrity with plyometrics or body positions. For instance, again, I'm going to refer to rugby a lot. Again, in the scrum, so a lot of weight going through people's bodies. So torso integrity in instances like that is crucial, but also torso integrity in landing as well. To design training program cycles based on the team/individual athletes and sport needs, continuously assessing performance against current and previous statistics. To supervise and motivate athletes, monitor and manage athlete well-being. It's not just about the physical, it's also about the mental, and assess and manage training loads to help minimise and reduce chances of injury. Okay, the list is not exhaustive of that, there's a lot more that will go into it, but there's some key things that I found have benefited me going through this journey. So, with that being said, what we're going to do, we're going to go through, so we're going to look at some of the fundamentals that we look to develop. We're then going to go into the needs analysis. We will then progress down through the needs analysis into periodisation, so how we then block and plan out the training that we've identified is needed. Then I'm going to break down some of those key fundamentals, so strength, power, plyometrics, and when we get into the plyometric session, we're going to have a bit of fun and we're going to get on our feet and start jumping around and coach each other through some things that hopefully you can take away with you. So let's scroll back up here. So some of the things that we're looking to develop. Strength, so strength, the ability to exert force. Power, the ability to perform a skill explosively. Muscular endurance, the ability to continue contracting a muscle or group of muscles against resistance, such as weights or body weight over a period of time. Plyometrics, so based on the understanding that concentric muscular contraction is much stronger if it immediately follows an eccentric contraction. of the same muscle, so that is the stretch shortening the cycle, hence the need for speed. I was going to slide in a Top Gun reference, but you know, I thought against it. Speed and agility. So speed, the ability to move all or part of the body as quickly as possible. Agility, the ability to change velocity, so accelerate, decelerate, and direction as quick and as efficient as possible. So, how do we know what it is that we need to develop? Okay, that's where the needs analysis comes in. I think a lot of people are under the impression that it's all about the exciting stuff in the gym, but we need to know, like yourselves, we need to know what's going on before we know how we're going to get that roadmap from A to B. So obviously needs analysis, we need to know what is needed from an athlete perspective for their given sport, and also what is required from that sport. So as an example, as I said, I'm going to use rugby a lot. You've got an amateur rugby player, you've got an elite rugby player. The needs on both those athletes are going to be completely different based on the competition and stage that they're at. You've got your amateur athlete. A lot of what we do is going to benefit them anyway because of the training age of those individuals. But what we want to do is we want to look at where they are at now, but also if they're aiming to go to college, university, become an academy player, we are going to start looking at what is required from an academy level player, from a needs perspective and an elite level player. That's going to help us break down our plan. Again, so it's more specific. All right. So, if you have any of you got it open at the moment?
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, just for this section, so it's a little bit more visual. So we are down, so just past the needs analysis slide where we've now kind of got the athlete profile, sport history.
Athlete movement assessment.
Should be just above that.
Oh yeah, needs analysis.
Yes, the needs analysis and then the slide below that. So, with regards to this, we're looking at getting the athletes themselves to fill these parts out. Okay, I'm using my brother here. This is what I use as part of my SSC assessment. So we're getting the athletes to put their details in. We've got on there the given sport. So we've got golf. Okay, we're looking at sporting history. All right, and we're also looking at what they're currently doing with regards to this sport. So from a training perspective, Monday to Sunday, what they are currently doing. For yourselves, it's a good idea. If you've got someone, I imagine, that's got an injury, feel free to jump in. You want to know what they're doing at the moment, if anything at all. Have they been seeing anybody else? Because you guys are trying to paint a picture, essentially, of what's going on. So we're trying to paint a picture of where this person, where this athlete is currently at. Okay. We're going to move down into the athlete personal assessment. Now, again, this is something that they're doing on their own. It's something that I'm going to look to discuss with them afterwards. But having their own input is going to mean that it's a true reflection of how they're thinking. Okay, it's very easy from a coach perspective to sit there and not necessarily guide them in a certain way, but you're going to ask certain questions that, again, you want the information for, but they're going to be very quick to please. They're going to answer certain things a certain way. So we want the athlete to score themselves. Again, it's just giving us a bit more information, and then we're looking at what they like, what they don't like. Again, I'll put on the next slide points to note. It seems like a very mundane process, this part, and very boring, but it's all relevant. Okay, so during the process, we're getting a feel for the athlete, their perspective, their expectations. You know, are they critical of themselves? Are they driven? Where is their focus? What feelings do we get regarding their mindset and how they approach training, competing? Can they reflect on the past and current? These are all things that we're going to need the athlete to be able to do. We're going to coach them through it, but knowing where they are on that stage is going to make our life a lot easier. We're not just responsible for physical well-being, but also psychological well-being of our athlete. Okay, we're here to push and develop the individual slash team, but also manage expectations. All right. So the needs analysis required for a sport. We've got golf. Okay. I guarantee some of you guys have come across golfers. So we're looking at the biomechanics of the sport itself. Okay. This is something that I would then be doing. I can do it with the athlete to get a bit of feedback from them. But I'm looking at what we've got. So with regards to golf, acceleration and deceleration, so of the swing itself, the change of direction slash agility, so the rotational element of a swing. Max speed, not really relevant, you know, this speed training you're going to do, but from a rotational perspective, not general speed. Multi-directional, so obviously the change in swing direction mechanics at different stages throughout the process. Vertical jump, no, it's not something that we're going to look at. Strength endurance, so need to maintain through the round. So if you think you've got a golfer that's got 4 hours on a golf course, being able to maintain that level of performance is going to be critical. Okay? If after 2 hours up front nine, a golfer does decide to drop down from a physical perspective, it's going to have a massive impact on the round itself. And then balance, it's one that I've added there as well, balance. So maintain a position through a swing. Look at energy systems as well that are then required for that person. What we're going to do is we're going to move straight down to periodisation. What is it? Why is it important? So I don't know how you guys plan out rehab from a strategy perspective.
So what I think is quite nice is with that needs analysis, it's nice to have that checklist, because one thing that I would do, for example, is I would look at for that client or that patient at the end of the process, what are the 3 things that we need to hit?
Yeah.
So like for example, sitting at a desk all day, it might be flexion intolerance, a bit of muscular endurance. For someone who is working on site, it might be sporadic intensity. Yeah. So when it comes to periodization, it would, for us, well, if I speak from my perspective, it would be what can I get away with without their pain creeping up too high. Okay. Whereas opposed for strength and conditioning, I suppose it would be just purely physical and mental adaptation.
Yeah, exactly. We need to know before we can get to that end result or get to the position of actually training. We need to know what's required, as you said. If I'm standing in the dark and I start working on vertical jump with an athlete that doesn't require it, what's the point? You know, this is where that mind comes into play. Again, when I said that being mundane, a lot of people look at it, and I've seen it before, I've seen other S&C coaches, they'll move through this section pretty quickly because it's not the exciting stuff, it's not the stuff that makes Instagram reels look cool. But arguably it's even more important because it's given us our information. Without the information, how are we able to kind of connect those dots? I found that I've tried it with a couple of people where, again, I've solely allowed them to fill most of it out themselves, and I've also tried it where I've been kind of, as I said, present when they're filling out some of this information. I guess it's going to be individual for each athlete, but some parts get them to do it themselves, buy-in, because at the end of the day, and we're going to get onto it in a minute, if we've got an athlete that's training for a specific competition, that let's say we're creating a cycle that is going to be lasting a year, there needs to be a buy-in, and just focusing on short term just doesn't work. You're going to notice that I'm going to mumble a little bit because my head's going through lots of different...
I just wanted to add in there, Steve, that there's some research with rehab exercises that clients who sign off their own rehab exercises are more likely to do them. Yeah. So I suppose it's the same thing for you, it increases that the compliance and contribution to the process.
Yeah, and it's like, so if I've got a younger athlete, I'm going to be looking at ways to essentially in a way get them to sign a contract with me that they're going to be following certain processes. If you've got someone that is 15, 16, 17 years old, arguably it's going to be a lot harder to maintain focus, even though they're a little bit older, than an athlete that is 10, 11, 12, because of the outside influence. So we're looking at how can I get this appealing to someone that's 15, 16 years old, without saying too boring, if that makes sense. But again, you just need a buy-in. You need a buy-in. It's irrelevant the work you put in, the athlete, what they've put in up to now. If they don't believe in the process, you're going to get nowhere. It doesn't matter how good you are. Same as yourselves. If they don't believe in you and what you're doing, and how they see their journey, you will probably see that how many clients complete exercises and then come back over the win. How many clients do you see 6 weeks later doing exercise and actually not? You know, it's that buy-in, and that's not a reflection of yourselves. Again, I'm going to be biased because I work with you guys, but I see how you work. So, again, for me, finding different ways to try and create that buy-in. So we've got the information. You know, we know where we are. We know the kind of athlete that we've got, the person we've got in front of us. More importantly, because they're not just an athlete; they are a person. And they're going to have different motives, not just sport related. How are we now going to plan their training? So I used that year example a moment ago for planning an athlete's training. So have any of you heard of macrocycles, mesocycles, microcycles?
Yep.
So looking at a whole year, all right? So Olympics is a good example because you break down 4 years into 4 separate macrocycles, but imagine a macrocycle is a year. What we need to do is we've got a year period, we've got a competition date, so that competition date of the Olympics, wherever that may be, and then what we're going to do is we are going to look to organise that block of training based on that one date. So we're going to reverse engineer everything, okay? Our aim is to peak at that Olympics. There's no point in peaking beforehand, halfway through, 6 weeks in, 12 weeks in. We need to peak at that Olympics. So what we need to do is we need to reverse engineer our program from there, all right? We know what they need, we know how we're going to get there. Now we need to put it down on paper what we're going to do. So we've got a macrocycle a year, mesocycle, which is a month or block. So it's not necessarily a month. It could be a 6-week block and you could do it like so, but months, especially if you're using a year cycle, is a good way of doing it, and a microcycle week. Have you guys got the slide open with all the funky colours on it?
Mm-hmm.
Where we've got essentially we've got a macrocycle.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one. So there we've got a plan. We've got our macrocycle. All right, across the top you can see our months. We've got our microcycles and we've got our mesocycles just below that as well. We've then got comp phase, we've got training phase, we've got intensity, we've got volume, and we've got testing. Okay, so with our needs analysis, we've gathered information, we've tested the athlete for specific movement patterns based on their sport, mobility, whatever that may be. Now we're going to input everything into here. So you'll notice competition phase below our week and our mesocycle. Now why is this important? So you'll notice on the right hand side is where number 1 is, it's not on the left hand side. Okay? I base this around my brother, so around golf being not always a fair weather sport, but there are the periods of time where there's going to be a lot of competition, there's going to be a lot more rounds of golf. So we've started his macrocycle in December. We've started with GP, and that goes through till February, and that's general prep. Okay, so it's a general preparation phase. What we're looking to do in this phase is we're looking just to get some general preparedness for the athlete across the board. There's no real specifics, okay? We are going to build muscle, we are going to do our strength training, endurance training, aerobic, anaerobic mobility, whatever it may be in that phase there, to develop the athlete from wherever it is they're in now and get them in as good of a shape as we possibly can. all right, in that period of time. We're then...
Just out of interest.
Yeah.
Oh no, you said leave questions at the end.
That's all right, go on.
So with the macro, meso, micro, is that based on the psychology of goal or setting goals, or is it more based on physiology?
So it's an organisational standpoint, really. So it's goal setting. What we need to do is essentially with this, we're ticking boxes as we go. So instead of me taking yourself and going, right, we've got a macro cycle and every 4 months we're going to tick a box. Have we got to where we got to? Yes. Brilliant. If we haven't, well, hang on a minute, we've wasted 4 months. There's going to have been a point at that time where, for whatever reason, we're not meeting needs.
Oh, so that's
training
feedback as well. Okay.
Yeah. So what we're doing is by breaking it down in bite-sized chunks, it's easy for the athlete because they're not focusing on too much. It's easy for us to track. We can track progress on a weekly basis based on adherence to what it is that we're doing. And then we can break it down a little bit further if we need to. So it just means that we're not wasting opportunity, to be honest with you. You know, if we've got a year, we've got the Olympics there, at the end of that macro cycle, we can't afford to waste any time. You know, if we waste a month and then I sit there and go, oh, hang on a minute, I could have corrected something back then, or you've made brilliant gains there, why have I not progressed it further, or actually do I need to regress them because of an injury or whatever it may be. So we then go into the SP, so specific training phase. We've got our athletes to a stage now where they are conditioned, or as conditioned as we possibly can get them in that period of time. Now we're going sport specific, okay? So we're now looking at specific drills and movements, technique work. So for golf, for instance, so we're looking at exercises that are going to help with swing power, balance, stability, mobility, things that are now going to have a direct impact on what we figured out in our needs analysis this athlete needs. Okay. We then go through into our competition phase where we're looking to maintain. You know, we're still going to keep up with kind of some sport-specific drills, but we're not looking now to make any real physical gain. There's going to be physical gain, because obviously the training they're doing, but we're not looking at that being our main focus. We're looking at now maintaining and managing our athlete through this period of time. Because again, we're looking to, although you can't stop an injury, we're looking to reduce the likelihood of that as much as we possibly can. All right. We then go into a transition phase, which is an off season. All right. Again, a lot of people go off season, or it's off season. We're looking at resting, yes, but we're also looking at encouraging athletes to partake in other sports. Yeah, other sports that there are skills that you might go on holiday and I don't know, there's a table tennis tournament. It seems very, irrelevant, but what can table tennis help? Hand-eye coordination, things like that. So encourage our athletes to take up another sport, badminton, golf, if it's not golf, whatever it may be. All right. Quickly, just dropping down again, because as I said, I understand this bit is, to get through this bit. We've got linear and undulating. Okay, linear and undulating is just now looking at how we're managing intensity, volume, and load. Okay, so linear is a very progressive way of managing load and increasing intensity based on volume and intensity, and undulating is very is up and down, essentially, without getting too complicated with it. All right. And then I think the important part here, really, as well as at the bottom, is testing, and why testing is important for yourselves. How often? I mean, I imagine it's very fluid with yourselves, based on how quickly or slowly people progress. But how often are you looking at retesting injuries?
I think it's every session.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and obviously the point of that again is retesting, obviously to see where they're at, to know, well, hang on a minute, is what we're doing working? Do we need to progress it? Do we need to regress it? Whatever it may be. It's the same as with this. We need to test general prep. Is what we're doing making the athlete better? Are we hindering the athlete? Is the athlete overworked? Are they tired? Are they fatigued? Do I've got my plan of volume, but actually do I need to reduce that volume because now I've got Charlotte that's on the verge of potentially hurting herself, which is not going to have any benefit. That's all right. All right. Cool. Are there any questions with regards to that? 'Cause it's a lot of information to kind of fit into that small session, but is there anything from yourselves that you didn't make sense, you'd like to know a little bit more about?
Would you only retest? Would you only test like at the start of the season and at the end of the season, or would you do like throughout the season?
So throughout, so we're going to look to regular tests. So obviously we want to get a test at the start for needs. We are going to test an athlete at the end as well, because taking an Olympic for example, all right, we've talked about that last year leading into it, but if we've got a 4-year cycle, I need to know, has this year been a success? Where is the athlete at the end of the season now? Do they have something left in the tank? Have we peaked correctly? Have we overdone it? You know, has the athlete actually picked up an injury based on where we are? So we need to know on a regular basis how long you do that, how long you leave between. On this here, I've left mainly 3 weeks, so every 4 weeks testing. Doesn't have to be that. You guys do it every single day. Am I going to test every single session? No, because I might be seeing an athlete twice a day, 4 or 5 times a day if it's, you know, a serious athlete. So figuring it out where, yeah.
Do you add in an error margin? So like a margin for injury or a margin for overshooting, undershooting, for rest, or?
So there's rest periods that we'll build in. So part of this is I've put in kind of a mid-season rest.
Yeah. Okay.
If you're, and although rest, again, obviously rest is important and we don't want to underestimate the benefits of rest, but if we're on a time constraint as well, I'd be more inclined to look at, okay, well if we need to, and Elliot is really, really tired and I can see this fatigue's kicking in, but actually the next 6 weeks, our volume's really high. Well, hang on a minute, do I now need to look at bringing that volume down? So it's kind of more fluid as we go in.
Okay.
Yeah. Do I need to reduce his volume now? And then actually, if we built in rest in 2 weeks' time, well, hang on a minute, we can just shift that training if we need to. Cool.
How do you know, so if you are working with an athlete that is, say, on a 4-year Olympic cycle, if in those 4 years they've got other competitions that they are competing in, how do you ensure, without holding them back in terms of the achievements at those other competitions, that you are still going to peak in 4 years' time and not before?
So if you think so 4 years is broken down into 4 macro cycles. So what we're going to do is we're going to, let's take it from the start. So our first year we've got European Championships. We're going to design a program very, very similar based on European Championships. Is it our sole focus? No, our sole focus is 4 years' time, but it's just as important. It's important for us to get information, get feedback. Are we peaking at the right time? As an S&C coach, have I planned the training correctly for Charlotte to peak at European Championships? No. Okay, this is a learning cycle now. We're then going to take this into the second macro cycle. So it's kind of like a progressive way of kind of developing that 4 years. Each year should be treated individually, although we all know the end result is that 4-year point. Yeah. Well, so what else? Thinking from Elliot, from Danush's standpoint, so European Championships, World Championships, what other, other competitions from a...
Yeah, she'd have, for her, she'd have because she was representing Jamaica, she should have Pan American, Worlds, and Olympics. So she'd have so Worlds and Pan Americans would happen in 1 year, and then the next year would be Olympics.
Okay. So essentially, we've got one eye on the goal, but also we don't want to take away the importance of...
She didn't even really think about, she wouldn't have even thought about, although the Olympics is like the pie in the sky, she wouldn't have even thought about it, the main...
Macro cycle, year at a time, season at a time, and then it's kind of like, as an S&C coach perspective, the last 3 years, despite results, have been crucial in gaining information now for us to essentially tweak and perfect our cycle going into our 4th year, into our Olympic. Because again, I imagine the way I like to manage it as well is as soon as that season ends, that third season, and we're now going to the Olympic year, bam, game face on, it's the Olympics now.
Yeah, so for her, I think that she would, like the way I'm relaying what you've said into what I've seen in Noosh is that her macro cycle would be being able to attain a skill that she's never done before.
Okay.
And then her mesocycles would be her consolidating the skills that she's already got.
Yeah.
And then her microcycles would be, I suppose, the steps along the journey.
Yeah.
But then also, as well as that, her conditioning intensity would change throughout the mesocycle.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Did that answer your question? Or did I mumble a bit more? No, sure. Okay, cool. So let's have a little look. Let me scroll back up to. So as I said, so some of the things that we're looking to develop: strength, power, muscular endurance, plyometric, speed, and agility. The three sections that I've looked to go in a little bit more detail about is strength, power, and plyometrics. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll go through those. We'll start with strength. Strength underpins everything that we do. Okay, we are not going to be able to reach our full potential when it comes to power and speed and plyometrics if we don't have a strong, stable strength base. Okay, so strength itself, development of force production by lifting heavier loads greater than 80% of our 1 rep max. Talking about 1 rep max, you'll hear a lot of people talk about 1 rep max and it being a waste of time. There's going to be some people that it's not necessarily going to be the most beneficial for, based on targets, goals, whatever that may be. From our perspective, and I imagine it's quite hard for yourselves, if you're rehabbing someone, you're not going to be testing 1 RM. But I imagine scaling it back and looking at the weight that they're currently lifting, if it's a shoulder injury, without pain, you've got them pain-free, and using that essentially as like a 1 RM to a certain extent. Does that make sense? I don't know if that's relevant, really.
For me, I mainly use RPE.
Right, yeah.
So I focus on their rate of perceived exertion.
Yeah.
How hard are you pushing out of 10?
Yeah.
People in pain, I normally keep it to a 6 or 7. If they're athletes, then I'll bring it up to an 8. Very occasionally a 9.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, so that's what I mean. You know, we're taking someone that is an athlete really in 100% physical peak condition. Arguably not. Lots of little niggles and tweaks and things like that that they're going to be managing. But from a specific standpoint, having an idea of what athletes' loads are or capabilities are at the moment is going to help us really dial in, especially the strength element here, on to get the most bang for our buck, because that's what we're aiming to do, bang for our buck. Strength is the foundation for the development of power and speed, so use of multiple and compound exercises that will transfer to sport/movement. This is something that my S&C tutor was talking to us about, and again, I'll be interested to know your perspective on it from a rehab perspective, is always told to do not add strength to dysfunction. So obviously if we have dysfunction and then add strength, we strengthen dysfunction, not athletic performance. That's from an S&C perspective. If someone isn't able to move correctly in a squat, are we going to look at developing maximal loads in a squat movement because they don't have that ability yet? So I guess that's very different for yourselves, because quite often what you're working with isn't necessarily dysfunction, but you're working for a restricted.
Yeah, my only thing I'm quite mindful of is, because patients are so hyper aware of their body's going to be in pain, is if we start to use too many form corrections or too many internal movement cues, then it can make them even more anxious about their bodies. So like you, for example, get a lot of practitioners who say, oh, you're rolling your knees in when you squat, or your pelvis is completely out of line and things like that, and it can start to make people a bit hyper-conscious. So then I suppose that, but then the crossover would be that you're trying to move the maximum output, which I suppose is different.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, I imagine people in a rehab perspective are, as you said, hyper sensitive to certain things, not criticism, but again, because of
they're not able
the trauma or
they're not in a state of flow.
Yeah.
They're not able to when you squat, or when you're doing something good, you kind of lose yourself in the movement. Whereas people in pain, their body is a barrier to what they want to do.
Yeah, and whereas if you've got an athlete, generally speaking, you've got someone whose attention to detail is all about development and perfection. They're aiming for perfection. Therefore, you know, you're able to kind of, I guess, dial in on that a little bit more. But as I said, it's that dysfunction. And I said the squat analogy. You know, if someone doesn't have the ability to squat properly, I'm not going to be loading maximal loads. Again, because it's pointless. You know, we're not. The output we're going to get isn't going to be a true reflection on the athlete's potential, because they're not moving correctly. And as I said earlier, so strength underpins all we do. So without strength, we will not be able to fulfill our full potential regarding developing our athletic qualities. So ways of developing strength, and again, it's trying to keep it as simple as possible and as entertaining as possible. So we've got the maximal effort method, we've got the repeated effort method, we've got sub-maximal effort method, and we've got the dynamic effort method. You would have all heard of these, just in a different way. You would have 5x5s and that. We'll go through that now. So we've got maximal effort method, so lifted near maximal weights, the repeated effort methods, sub-maximal loads lifted for repetitions at or close to failure, the sub-maximal effort method, so sub-maximal loads lifted for low repetitions, perfect technique, and minimal fatigue, so which is good for developing movement efficiency, and then the dynamic effort method, so sub-maximal loads accelerated with maximal intent. Okay, so breaking these down, as I said, you're all going to recognise these. I've just given them a fancy name, essentially. All right, so maximal effort method. So we've got high intensity loads, low reps, moderate to high sets, 85 to 95% of a client or athlete's 1 rep max, and we're looking at 1 to 5 repetitions. Again, I guarantee you've all heard of that. One compound exercise, very strong, a focused stimulus. We're going to be building high levels of fatigue, again, so it's going to be critical to manage this throughout your cycle. You know, we've blocked things out, we know we're going into a strength cycle, we know we're going to have to really manage our athlete. Are they getting enough rest? Has Katie come in, and we're in the middle of a strength block. We said before about kind of unstructured rest. Is she coming in and actually she's really fatigued because she's not sleeping well at home, she's been unwell, whatever it may be, you know, is this something that's going to be beneficial to her at this moment in time? So we're aiming for kilos on the bar, essentially. That's our focus. It's an advanced training method, so for an experienced athlete, it requires intense stimulus for adaptation. What is an experienced athlete?
Somebody who competes on a regular basis?
Could be. 10-year-olds compete every Sunday, every Saturday.
Yeah.
So, looking at, instead of sometimes the answer you can get is someone, again, you know, an older athlete, someone who's been doing it for a long period of time. We're looking at training age, essentially. Okay? Training age. Myself and Elia, we go to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu together. We don't. He's trying to get it to go. His training load with his sport, let's say he's been competing for 10 years, okay, and mine is very, very low. Who's going to get a bigger stimulus or quicker adaptation based on his sport and his movement patterns? Who's going to learn more in a short space of time? Yourself. Yeah, so a lower training age. But does that mean that because I'm going to learn more in a short space of time that I should have everything piled on my shoulders because of that? No, I need to manage myself. Overtraining is a thing. Elliot's tolerance to the specific load is going to be a lot higher because of his training age. So Elliot, in this instance, would fall into that experienced athlete. He's not necessarily a professional athlete, but with regards to me, you know, his training age is a lot higher. Yeah. So you'll see a lot of people strength training in a gym. It's great. It doesn't mean that people need to avoid it, but how many people come into yourselves with back issues because they're deadlifting, and you start asking them what they've been deadlifting, and they're, I deadlifted 160 kilos and I've put my back out. Well, how long have you been deadlifting for? 3 weeks. Wait a minute. Do you know what I mean? There's a problem there. And I think ego is a big thing, and that's where us coming in as an SSE coach and yourselves, managing expectation, managing that ego, managing the load for yourselves, not allowing people to get too ahead of themselves, because people are going to get very confident very quickly as soon as they're able to do something, and then I imagine regression on an injury, the percentage of that chance that can be quite high. So popular methods for this: Texas method or Bill Starr, which is 5x5, or Jim Wendler method, so he's a powerlifting coach, so 5-3-1. A quick breakdown of that, essentially. So week 1, 3x5, week 2, 3x3, week 3, 1x5, and we're looking at working at 90% 1RM. These are just things that you can play around in your own training if you want. That's what I've got in there. All right. Moving into repeated effort method. So moderate to high reps, moderate loads, high sets. Non-maximal load to failure. So 70 to 85% of our 1 rep max, 6 to 12 repetitions. Is useful in season or with developing athletes. So again, you've got an athlete that is young with regards to training age. So we don't need to go greater than 85% really for this athlete to really get that adaptation. All right, we're building tonnage, we're building muscle, we're building tolerance, we're building resilience. So in resilience, yes, you can argue building resilience will come in strength training, the low reps, higher weight, but depending on the athlete, also the risk of injury, all right, will go up. So useful with developing athletes. Can train multiple exercises and movements in a session. Brilliant for hypertrophy if that's the goal. So popular schemes: plateau loading, so 4x8 at 75%, undulating plateau, 12, 8, 10, 6, drop sets, escalated density training. All right. Sub-maximal effort method, a skill of strength, so perfect technique with minimal fatigue, low reps, moderate load, high sets, 70 to 80% of our 1 rep max, 6 to 12 repetitions. So we're looking at building load and a frequency focus. So we're getting reps under our belt. Again, building volume is going to build tolerance. Okay. If you think we're strength underpinning everything we do and putting in a solid foundation, we're progressing onto power training, plyometrics training. So having tolerance in our body to then be able to cope with greater loads, which when we get into plyometrics and power we'll talk about, is going to, as I said, it's giving us that reps under our belt. All right. Good for retention loads and beginners. You can train multiple exercises and movements in a session. A popular scheme, so similar to repeated effort method. And then the dynamic effort method, it's a mouthful, dynamic effort method, used to improve the rate of force development and explosive strength, lends itself to power and speed development, specific approach, so you're addressing positional demands, for instance rugby, handoffs, scrummaging, whatever that may be. The example there, and something we can potentially play around with after our plyometrics if anyone wants to, is imagine setting up for a bench press. So we've got a rack set out and we've actually got the safety arms set out like we have there. So we've got a bench in, we've got our bar sitting on those supports there. We've got a weight plate on each side, and just between the barbell and the weight plate we've got a band on each side, which is in our, we can put a dumbbell down to kind of anchor it to the ground. Now what we're doing is we're performing repetitions as explosively as we possibly can, hence the safety elements, all right? We are aiming for Josh to push his barbell out as fast as he possibly can. The band is straight away going to be wanting to put us back as well, right? So we're adding resistance. We're not going to go great loads, okay? But it's pointless, we're aiming to move fast. The band is adding that resistance as well, so we're aiming to move as fast as possible. Hand it off in rugby. I don't know if you watch rugby. Yeah, again, that handoff, it doesn't matter how strong the person is, if they're not able, and again we'll get into this with power, if they're not able to complete that movement in a given space of time. You know, if Josh has got a second to perform a handoff, it doesn't matter if he can lift a high load that takes 3 to 4 to 5 seconds. You know, we need him to be able to generate that in a fast space of time. So this is kind of a good crossover within our strength. Is power. Okay. Any questions? Any questions?
So the pyramid would go strength, plyometrics, dynamic effort method.
What's that again?
If it was a pyramid, it would be strength forms the foundations.
Yeah.
Then plyometrics, then dynamic effort method?
So the dynamic effort method can be it's a good crossover.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a good crossover. It falls within kind of power as well. You know, we're moving a lighter load at a faster speed. It's that crossover between loads, and again, we can kind of get to the finer details of it, and how it kind of does that. Cool. Does anybody, again, I'm conscious of a lot of waffling. Does anyone want to go to work, graduate? You alright? Go on, mate. Because again.
Can you give some examples when you would use repeated effort method versus when you would use sub-maximal, if they're quite similar?
Yeah. So again, if you're looking at developing athletes, so they're both very similar, as in developing athletes and beginners could possibly fall into the same category. For yourself, looking at let me just where's that gone? It's going to be a specific to the athlete. I would be tempted to try both and work with both. You know, you're looking at very similar percentages of 1 rep max, similar rep loads. You know, both of the aims is to build volume and focus. Both exercises, or training multiple exercises in the same session. Building volume for one and then maintaining for the other is arguably like a finer detail. So if you're looking at building volume, you're going to be going with the sub-maximal, and then obviously your repeated effort is going to build volume, repeated effort method, and the frequency focus is sub-maximal. Very similar. They look the same, play around with it. One athlete is going to prefer one to the other. It doesn't really matter, to be honest with you. Just the way that you train it. Could be, have I put enough? So I've not put any popular schemes there for some maximum effort. So what I can do is if I send over, although it's very similar, there's going to be a few kind of intricacies, maybe some of the other programs. If you want? Yeah, send you over some of them. To make it sense. There.
And would you put somebody on something? Would you put someone on a strength training program if they were in the middle of their season? Or is that when you just change the?
Yeah, no. So I wouldn't, just because if it's in the middle of a season and we're looking at maintaining and managing load, so volume and intensity, and our main focus is at competing, you could sit there and say, going for a strength cycle is going to put additional stress on the athlete that's not necessarily needed if we've done our general prep phase correctly. We've built our foundation, so if we then get into our competition phase and now we realise, well, hang on a minute, we could have probably benefited from a bit more strength training, it's a little bit, not too late, but the offset, you know, what's the priority now? I'm going to make notes. I'm going to look and go, hang on a minute. Joss definitely needs a little more strength. You know, we should a bit more strength focus. So we come to our next cycle, we put it in there.
So would that be different for example, we'll get a lot of people who play sport as a hobby, or like marathon runners who've done absolutely no strength work at all. Then it seems that their lack of capacity might be predisposing their injuries. So would that be a time where then, as long as it's sub-threshold, we're not going to push them into chronic load, that we could start to build strength during the cycle?
Yeah, so what you're ultimately going to be looking at is a max load session. What is going to be the recovery time, essentially? So how do we offset that? If you've got an amateur athlete, which again, SSC isn't just for elite athletes, as I said before, I will quite often train personal training clients with more of a blend between PT and S&C in that blend. So looking at the recovery and go, well, hang on a minute, we can do Joss's, what sport do you play?
Hockey.
Hockey.
And
And jiu-jitsu.
And jiu-jitsu.
Who's better?
Don't know yet.
Hang on a minute, there's a flaw. So we could arguably sit there and say that what we could do is we can do some strength work with Josh throughout his season, as long as it's not having a direct impact on his performance.
Mm-hmm.
So if he's got a competition Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I'm doing strength sessions Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it's going to be quite detrimental to your performance. So we can build it in based on the athlete. So again, it's that crossover between elite athlete, amateur athlete, everyday person. There's going to be a crossover. For yourselves, I would sit there and kind of look at how you balance it out. Do you think there's a benefit to it? Can you justify recovery time and justify the need to increase load and stimulus? Well then, yeah, that justification's there. Yeah. Happy?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Again, it's what I'll do is if I put together, if you write it down for me, if you just put together strength programming block and remind me, and what I will do is I can send you over some examples of a strength training block. I can put it up to the group to be fair as well, so everyone can see it. A strength training block and maybe multiple blocks, so you can see the difference. And ones that you possibly would implement and some that you might go, actually, that's definitely a pre-season-esque type of training. So power. What is power? So power is the ability to perform a skill explosively. The equation for power, so power equals force, in brackets weight, times velocity, so the speed that we're moving said weight. We're looking at the rate of force development. That's a key component of expressing power. So the force velocity curve, which the next slide will show us. To develop power, an athlete must either, and this is just a good example, it was a way that helped me understand it a little bit easier. So an athlete must either move the same weight with more speed or move more weight at the same speed. Imagine we've got a 100 kilo squat and it's taken Charlotte 10 seconds to complete a 100 kilo squat. For it to become a power movement, what we're looking to do is we are looking for Charlotte to move that 100 kilo squat in a faster speed, so faster than 10 seconds, or an increased load, so 110 kilos at that 10-second speed. That's just a kind of a simple way of kind of breaking it down. What's your squat at? 200 kilos. Yeah. That's just kind of a way that when it was explained to me, it made a little bit more sense. Obviously, there's more intricacies to it with regards to percentages of what it is that we're doing. So, in order for us to train max power, essentially we are working between 40 and 60% of our 1 rep max. Okay, that's the aim that we're moving the weight at that speed, that weight at a certain speed. Ballistic power, so 20 to 40%, and speed power, 0 to 20%. If you flick down to the next slide, it will show you the force velocity curve, okay, which is essentially the be all and end all when it comes to power training, okay. So you've got the different axes, so you've got the y-axis and the x-axis. So y-axis is our force, x-axis is our velocity to our speed, all right? Maximum strength and maximum velocity. So peak power falls somewhere in the middle of that range, okay? If you kind of place your finger or look at where that peak power point is, we're not moving maximum weight, we're working at 30, it says 30 to 80% for peak power of a 1 rep max. And the speed there, maybe breaking it down 1 millisecond, for example, in that zone there. So speed strength is a little bit lower than that, so we are working with a lighter weight, faster speed, a greater speed, and then obviously maximum velocity the opposite end. Like I said earlier about the benefits of a handoff. If Josh, he may be able to bench press 100 kilos, I don't know, what can he bench press? 100 kilos? Mate, I would have claimed it. Should have claimed it. He may be able to bench 100 kilos, and that may make him a strong athlete with regards to the movement, okay? But look how fast or slow he's going to be completing that movement. Yeah? If he's only got a second to complete that movement, well, hang on a minute, now there's a gap. Okay, we're not able to, if it takes him 4 seconds, we need to produce that power in a short space of time. He's not going to be able to do it. So that's where strength being an underpinning foundation, because in order to be powerful and move a weight, we need to have that strength there, but also we now need to now focus on moving that strength in a faster way. All right, does that make sense? Yeah. So methods of training power. You've got the complex method, compound method, and contrast method. And these are done. There's a lot of studies done based on the benefits of each of these, which we'll kind of get onto. Which suits who, which is the best, going to give you the best outcomes. Again, based on sport, based on athlete, you're going to determine which of these you think is going to be best for that particular athlete. So we've got a complex method. The performance strength, so speed-based sets in the same session. So imagine, have you heard of PAP training? So post-activation potentiation. Okay. So we've got, we're looking at developing, let's say a bit of vertical jump. So we're going to be using a box jump, okay, as an example. We've got a barbell squat, which we can load up, which is going to mimic the same type of movement. So what we're going to do is we are going to essentially hack a neural system to produce a bigger output. All right. So an example of this is we are going to back squat 3 reps at a certain weight. I didn't put the weight down on here. I'll find that for you so I can give you that exact detail. For 3 reps. Back squat, heavy weight, 3 reps. We're then going to have a 4-minute rest. We are then going to perform a plyometric exercise, so a box jump. The heavy squat is going to require more from us, and it's going to require us to recruit more from our body to produce that squat than the box jump would. So what we've done is we've recruited everything, okay, more than we need for the box jump. So we've now got that surplus. So now when we complete that box jump, we've got more than we need. Therefore, we're going to be able to produce more of an output, okay, for that box jump, okay. Programming it there, back squatting 3 reps, 4-minute rest, the box jump, box squat, through that section there. With regards to the rest, you could argue if you've got a gym full of athletes that you may only have 45 minutes with. Is 4 minutes rest going to give you enough time to be able to get it in? That's something the individual strength conditioning coach will play around with themselves. Studies show 3 to 5 minutes is optimal to get the most out of it. But again, if you've got more time and you've got an athlete that, for instance, you know, is fatiguing a little bit quicker, you may give them a little bit longer rest, or you may shorten the rest down based on time constraints. Okay, but again, if you're too tight for time when it comes to programming, are you going to program it in the first place? In that particular session. All right. It's something that I use with some of my clients that I find very beneficial. I've got a client who is a skateboarder, wakeboarder, so we're looking at a lot of plyometric stuff at the moment, and PAP training has been the way that we've been able to improve that more so, to a point where, and I'll show you visually when we start playing around soon, but we've got a box jump, we've got a box set up to a point now where they're able to, they went from the normal box upended, being able to jump onto that, so now they are starting from a seated position. You've got the box jump at its the box at its highest position, and then we've stacked more height on top. So that's kind of that progression there, and that's one of the methods we've used to progress that. All right. So the compound method requires your slow speed, high load, so your strength movement, and high speed low load, so the power movement training to be completed on alternate days. An example of that is your first day you're going to do your box squats at 85% of your 1RM and your bench press at 85% of your 1RM. The following day you're going to produce your higher speed lower load movements, squat jumps or box jumps, something like that sort, and bench throws. So on the bench, med ball throws, whatever they may be. Yeah, alternate days. Which of these two, and there's another one we'll go to in a moment, which of these two benefits which athlete? Again, it's not necessarily trial and error, it's playing around and see what you get the most out of. Time constraint, if we said before, if we can't safely prescribe PAP training, this might be a better method to use. Also, this could be a better method to use if you've got a younger athlete as well, where maybe that higher load and that high intensity session may be too much for them with regards to their training age and injury prevention. Then we go to a contrast method, so a combination of heavy to greater than 80% and lighter loads in the same session. So the higher load exercises at the beginning of the session and the lighter load exercises at the end of the session. So examples, so you're squatting your bench and your power cleans at the very start, finishing the session off, box jumps, med ball throws, drop jumps. Again, which one will suit your athlete, your person better? It's going to depend on training load and those types of things. But studies have shown that the compound movement, compound method being one of the better methods that got more consistent results in a controlled study. Again, it's not the be all and end all, but in that controlled study it showed most output and percentage increase across there. It's something that I'm playing around with a little bit more, but again, I need an athlete for consecutive days in order to work on that. So that also comes into play. All right. Any questions? It's a lot of information in it. But as I said, anything you guys would require more with regards to those. If you want me to go through a power session with PAP training to go through it, we can do it, we can organise that. I can send you over more from a programming of a whole session or a week session if we're focusing on power. If you find that beneficial to look at, I can have a little look at getting one of those put together for you as well. But yeah, anything you need, just please let me know. Okay, finally, so plyometrics, and also during the plyometric session, we're going to be able to get off that bum and a bit of fun as well. Alright, I wanted to put this here because obviously I was conscious of you all just sitting there listening to my groaning voice. Alright, so what is plyometrics or shock training? Plyometrics, the term plyometrics, and the name plyometrics obviously comes more from a Western influence. When it was introduced and founded, it was classed as shock training, and the guy, I forgot his name, was a Russian guy, so it was called Dr. Shock because of the way he came up with it. A little bit of brief back history with the development of it, without too much detail. Essentially, the method came about because so Dr. Shock had realised that he was training athletes, and people realised he was training athletes for Olympics for certain sports without high-tech kit, essentially. Use of body weight, stairwells, hallways, a way of producing movement and power through that. The development on that, fast forward a few years, is another guy, again, punch myself, I'm not knowing his name, came along and was essentially competition with regards to athletes. Whose athlete, it was kind of whose athlete's going to win the gold medal at this and that. The other guy had more high-tech equipment. However, basic movement, space, simple stuff was coming out the top. These athletes were still getting world records. They then come to a point where the combination of both ideas joined together, which is now where we've got plyometrics, where we're able to play around with things a little bit more. So, used to develop tendon stiffness and the stretch shortening cycle / reactive stretch index. So often utilises bounds, hops, jumps, slow or fast plyometrics. You know, there is a difference. So slow plyometrics, so greater or equal to 251 milliseconds of ground contact time. Fast, less or equal to up to 250 milliseconds of ground contact time. Arguably, in certain settings, how do we manage that, or measure that ground contact time? It comes down to intent, really, for ourselves. It comes down to intent. How are the athletes moving? How are the cues that we're giving them? Are things snappy? Are we setting the environment up for it to be that? If I'm trying to get athletes who are going to go on to drop jumps and depth jumps, if I wanted an athlete to be reactive and they're very, very slow, it now comes down to me to speed them up. I can't measure the exact time, but someone, Elliot, jumping, Charlotte jumping, and Charlotte clearly having more intent with her jump and her ground contact time a lot faster, we now know we're working in the realms of fast plyos, okay, without the finer details of kind of measurement. You get pressure plates, boards. You might see videos in elite environments where it is able to measure those types of things. Takeoff times, reactive speeds, whatever it may be, very high tech. It's proven, you don't need that to be able to develop it. But obviously elite academies, environments are going to have all of that to help. So it's often confused with ballistic training. The difference obviously ballistic training involves trajectory of objects. There is a degree of crossover with certain exercises, certain movements that could be classed as both plyo and ballistic. But again, it's making sure that we if it is plyometrics that we're looking to improve, that's kind of where we're going with it. We're not looking at throwing objects, for instance, or moving an object if it's plyometrics that we're able to develop. If it's ballistic, that's when we start playing around with different things. As I said, the crossover there, as an example off the top of my head, you're going to have, I'd say, ballistic training would be, ballistic training is a med ball throw would be classed more as ballistic. But arguably there are certain devices you can use that involves an object, not too much movement, but again, doesn't need to get complicated. I don't need to confuse you with it. All right. So the stretch shortening cycle. What is it? Any ideas?
The ability for a muscle, like load and explode, so a muscle to go out to lengthen and then contract forcefully.
Yeah. Load and explode is a good way of putting it. Like a spring, load and spring releasing of energy. Yeah, so the eccentric phase or landing phase involving the preloading, where the energy is stored, of an agonist muscle or agonist muscle groups. The amortization phase, so the transition phase, is the time between the concentric and eccentric phases. This time needs to be as short as possible, otherwise the energy stored during the eccentric phase dissipates, so reducing the plyometric effect. Use it or lose it. If you're creating and storing energy, we want to use that as fast as we possibly can. The longer we wait, the less energy we've got, the less explosive our movements can be, the less beneficial it's going to be. All right, and then you've got the concentric phase or takeoff phase. So it uses stored energy to increase the force of the movement. So, plyometrics ready to compete. I'm going to go through this, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go through some demonstration-based things, and then we're going to have a bit of fun. All right, start jumping around. So ready to compete. All right, it is what it says on the tin. How do we know that someone is ready to complete plyometrics? And I think this is probably going to be maybe one of the more relevant things to yourselves with regards to rehabbing and loading tendons, I guess, in a certain way and getting someone back up to a sport. So how do we know they're ready to complete a plyometric session or exercise? We need to know a few things first. So coordination, all right? We need to test coordination. There's lots of ways that you can do that. A-walks, A-skips, I'll send you guys some diagrams of those so you can kind of have a little look at what I mean. But we need to know, is the person athlete, do they have the ability to be coordinated? Because we're going to be jumping, we're going to be throwing the body around, we're going to be landing. So there needs to be an element of coordination there to reduce the chances of injury or the risk of injury, okay? So we're going to test coordination. We're then going to look at force absorption. So do they have the ability to land? There's no point in looking at, is someone able to jump if they're not able to land and absorb that force, okay? Which is very, very important. Me and Elliot, we were talking the other day, and there was something else, and I think you were saying, Elliot, in gymnastics, the number was even higher. But someone, for instance, landing off of a box, I think there was a stat that I read that 3 to 4 times the body weight is going through that area. And what did you say with regards to some of the gymnasts? You were saying it was something stupid.
Yeah, there's a gymnastic experience. The highest measurement was 30 times the body weight going through their ankles when they land a tumble.
So if we've not tested one, coordination, so their ability to be able to coordinate themselves in a particular movement, and we've not tested that they're able to actually absorb this force safely, correctly, properly, and they don't have the tolerance to do it, we then put, all right, gymnastics, but we put even half of that force through someone, we're going to get a chance of injuries and they get off the roof. Yeah. So how do we do that? So obviously we're looking at stiffness and we're looking at stick and landing. We're not looking to move down with the landing. We need to be looking at bilaterally and unilaterally force absorption. So a good gauge initially is pogos. Okay. I don't know if any of you have seen pogos completed. This probably means I'm going to get up and shoot up the camera now. So obviously, so pogos. Essentially, you've also got a pogo stick. Okay, that movement. What I'm going to get athletes to do is I'm looking at getting them to complete 8 to 12 pogos consistently, without any real deviation from where they are, and any real what's the word I'm looking for? What is the word I'm looking for? Degradation of kind of movement itself and kind of ankles. So what we're going to do, you don't have to, but I like to get athletes having their hands on their hips, and essentially what I'm doing is I'm pogoing on the spot, jumping and bouncing up on the spot. All right. What I'm not doing is I'm not landing flat foot. Okay, knees bending and hands like there. What I'm looking to do is I'm looking to use the spring of my feet. Okay, my ankles. Okay, it's very ankle dominant. What I'm looking to do is I'm looking to be as springy as I possibly can, and I'm looking to be consistent. So what I'm doing, looking now at that, my ankles are not touching. There's not much deviation. Okay. If Josh can't complete that, if Josh is all over the place, well, one, he's got past the coordination phase, you know, that. But now, if he's not able to tolerate that through his ankles, well, now if I start chucking him off of a box and asking him to jump again nice and fast, is he going to be tolerable to do that? Is his body going to tolerate it? Some way to progress that is to start working on that with a lower box, which is what you would do. We need to know where he's at. You know, as I said, if he's all over the place, well, hang on a minute, we're now going to progress things, and we're going to work on that side of things before we progress any further. We then need to look at landing. Okay, I'm just going to use this chair as an example. Okay, so we now need to look at landing as well. Okay, so how do most people land? Okay, bit of a bend in the knee, arm most of the time all over the place. A good position to think about, ski jumpers. When you see them in their tight lycra, straight down the slope, okay? Imagine this position here, okay? This is a good way to land. We're absorbing force, but we're not allowing it to all the way down to the floor, and we're prepared to go. Because essentially what we're aiming to do, we're aiming to land and then produce another singular or repeated movement. So we need to be ready to go again, okay? So that's essentially what the end goal is. So what I'm looking to do is I'm looking now at, can my athlete land? Now, would I use a chair this way to start with? No, I'll probably start with a lower box. But am I looking at, can my athlete land, and are they able to tolerate it? Now, as I said, things that I'm looking for, is there knee cave? is the athlete landing and they're not really able to control that landing. It's absorbing, but now, is that landing going to be efficient for another movement? You know, I said knee cave, if someone's landing like this, one, from a safety perspective and an injury perspective, you know, it's gone up here, but how am I now going to repeat a jump? Okay, so what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a nice solid landing, controlled, coordinated, to a point now, you're ready to go. Okay, some people talk to you about the sound and it being, there's an intent there. Okay, so I'm landing, okay, bang, ready to go. Okay, you could argue there that the torso angle there myself wasn't optimum, but again, it's something that I'm looking at. Okay, torso integrity. All right, does that make sense? So, what we're going to do is that we're looking at force absorption. Can they land and absorb the force? Is there stiffness there? Can they stick the landing? Does Charlotte land and have to correct herself? You know, that type of thing. All right. If we're not ticking all of those boxes, is it safe and efficient for them to kind of progress on? Because then what we're looking to do, the next section, is plyo strength. Okay, so we've looked at bilateral landing. We're also looking at unilateral landing as well. It doesn't mean that you have to potentially have to do both now. If you're looking at working a bit of bilateral stuff at the moment, then work with bilateral, go through this process bilaterally. But what you're not going to do is work through and test the force absorption bilaterally and then move on to plyometrics later on down the line without knowing that they've got the ability to do the same thing unilaterally. So either test it all together, or you can do it individually as long as you're aware you're not going to be programming unilateral work if they're not able to do that. All right. So plyo strength, ability to produce the force required for repeated movements. So now we're looking at, can they jump? So a bilateral single leg jump, yeah, single jump. Progress to unilateral, so single leg jump. Progress to drop and depth jumps. Can they express force with fast ground contact times? Okay, so we're looking at singular movements. As you can see, we're connecting the dots. Can they land? Yes. Okay, well now can they produce and express force? Yes. Okay, then we potentially do is we move on to repeated movements, all right? So, with that, so single leg jump, vertical jump, broad jump, okay? Same with single leg. Have any of you heard of and or completed drop and depth jumps? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Cool. So I've left it up on the board and I'll leave it there as well. So we've got depth and drop jumps. So depth jump is we're focusing more on jump height. Okay, so there's going to be a little bit more of a knee bend in that landing position because it's more quad dominant, and so we're focusing on height. Drop jump, the emphasis is on fast ground contact time. Now we are still looking to move fast with the depth jump, but now there's obviously going to be less knee bend because it is more ankle dominant. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get, because in a minute we're all going to start playing around.
Is a drop jump, would that be like in Olympic weightlifting when you drop under the bar and you have quite a loud?
So I would say, yes, but I would also say a drop jump, I would be looking at, who would I program that for? I would program drop jumps for netball players, basketball players. Okay. There's also, what's the name? It's not going to come to me now. I'll come back to you. There's a name, it's something I read with regards to certain jumps and Olympic weightlifting. There was a study I was reading the other day.
It is kind of like plyometric, isn't it? Because you're dropping underneath and you do
So
drop quite quickly?
it's the landing phase, yes, and also with regards to an Olympic lift, essentially what we're doing is we are generating power from our legs and driving into the floor, and we are as explosive as we possibly can. So essentially like the jump or takeoff phase,
Yeah.
okay, and then we're coming underneath the bar, as you said, so that's So would you program it for an Olympic weightlifter? There's definitely benefits to it because again, plyometrics, we're looking to be powerful, fast. There's kind of a crossover in Olympic weightlifting, and just I don't think I've got it on here. I'll send it to you. Yeah, I don't know where it is. I don't think I've got it on here. With that crossover. But as an Olympian or as an Olympic weightlifter, you are going to develop strength because we're looking at maximal loads. We're going to develop power because we're now looking at how fast we can move that because an Olympic weightlifter, I've done Olympic weightlifting.
I did it for about 6 years.
Go on, girl. Go on, girl. Get that on quiet. I love that.
I did it ages ago.
Yeah? So we now need to move that weight fast, which you already said. Yeah. So we need to move that weight fast. So plyometrics is a training tool in order to progress that movement. There is Sonny Webster. Sonny Webster is a good guy to follow from an Olympic weightlifting perspective. He does lots of crazy weightlifting. The guy is an ex-GB Olympian. Some of the stuff he does, he's got some training programs.
Yeah, as I say, he does a lot of like workshops and stuff.
Yeah, which is very, very good. You would probably find it would be done in a specific phase, phase. But then from there, I don't imagine them doing too much plyometric drop and depth jumps mid-season. They might do, it's part of warm-ups, it just depends. But yeah, so depth jump, jump height. What we're looking at, again, using the box, it's going to be a bit harder on the box because again, we don't have as much height. But essentially what we are doing is we're looking to land both feet, we're looking to take off fast, we're looking at jumping high. Okay, so from here, so we're going to jump here and take off. What did you notice about my body position, if anything?
Do it again.
About
notice about what?
So my body position, if you look at from feet to head, how I'm, yeah? If I'll do two. I'll do two. I'll do them completely different, all right?
One is focused on height and the other one's focused on landing. No?
Body is like straight or not straight.
Yeah. The Billy Elliot legs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Billy Elliot feet. So, triple extension. Look at basketball player. On a basketball player, or actually, it's a good example. Have any of you seen the NFL Combine and where they do? And you wouldn't, not even necessarily the NFL Combine, but a jump height test where the athlete is jumping up and they're trying to knock
The spinning.
the sticks, through. You're not going to see an athlete jumping with feet up because it's going to create drag, it's going to reduce that potential. Yeah. What they're going to do is they get a triple extension. Ankles, knees, hips, everything is getting as long as it can. Yeah, we're trying to create that length of space, that length. Okay. So same thing. Okay. I'm going to step off the same. But there's a difference. You feel it more. I don't know what it looks like from the outside, but again, there's a lot different there. Yeah. Really. Now we've got drop jumps. So emphasis on fast ground contact time. Okay. So as we said, we're aiming to be fast, but now you're going to notice or hopefully you notice, it's a little bit faster and it's a little bit more ankle dominant, okay, on that toe. So from there, okay. Okay, did you notice the difference? Yeah?
Quicker.
Yeah, much quicker. Now the intent on the depth jump was there, but what we're aiming for is obviously high. Drop jump, again, it's that speed, okay? So, what we're gonna do, okay, I want everybody, we'll make some room, and let's just go through force absorption, plyo strength. Pardon me. Let's assume again for the time perspective, the coordination that we've gone through that side of things. We're going to look at force absorption. So I want you guys to coach each other just through some pogos and some landing and giving each other cues, corrections if need be, and then move on to the plyo strength. So looking at, let's say one of either a broad jump or vertical jump, and then we'll pause there so that we can all go through the depth jump and drop jumps together. Happy? So, yeah? Cool. I'm going to move my stuff back.
Yeah, cool. Lizzie, if I just give that for you, sorry, in the corner, just to do a bit of a sweeping.
I'm conscious of marking away.
Fine. Oh, probably use this. Yeah,
Yeah.
see your photo. My photo. See that cute. Alright, so David, if you can please turn your feet out at 11 form position, and then from here, if you just follow me.
To the Olympic way to do.
And I was going to see if you can just reduce the contact time with the floor as much as
You coach me for that.
and reduce the amount of time we need on the floor.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
relax.
Without.
So you guys saying you can face the mirror.
Yeah.
This time was slightly different.
So, for this to be, obviously be like that.
You're actually sitting
Okay.
ground.
So you stand facing me, and then you're going to turn your feet face out.
See, I don't want half
So
such.
face out there. And then I want you to jump and keep nice and light.
Yeah, maybe
And
it's
yeah, keep your hands on your hips like that.
Oh, yes,
So
hands
go
on
for me.
So you guys are again. This time.
Let's try this.
And then I want you to
It's
do
your
the same
moving
thing
around
again.
quite a lot.
Try and stay in one place. And I want them to stay nice and be
So when I'm doing it, is I'm trying to like swing like an excitable dog.
Yeah, like springing.
Yeah,
So I want you to do more spring at the toes rather than
You take
Good, that's much better. So you want to like those as
So it was to go through
already, you know.
These baggy track kids as well.
let's go through. Oh, she's just a landing position.
Kind of
If we were 5 stepping off the box, how we can land.
Feeling good? Lifting?
What, looking at the depth jump and the drop jump?
Just this.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, do you want to land in that position?
Yeah.
And they want to land that position because it's the most efficient position to land to get ready to jump.
It's in the same. It's like you're jumping in the air, you give them a bit of a box.
Oh, yeah.
I like that.
Did you see that thing?
Let's let them run.
Yeah.
It's then taxing Australia now. It's all around
The biggest broad jump we possibly can. But
Cool.
also, joint
And
technique.
it is all kind of
So landing like this is just the most powerful position.
Most powerful, and it's safe, effective landing. You know, ensuring that everything's yeah.
So just going back to the pose, do you do both and then then unilateral?
Yeah, I feel
Or
like
do you-
So with pogos, I will just do pogos like this. I will then I've got a couple of people that I will then go down and work on the single leg stuff, okay, to see can they complete that same thing. But again, for me, it's more that's more about coordination. But okay, she stays spring.
Yeah,
If Kate can literally not get past this, all they need to do is we need to think out how we use it.
Yeah.
How would I mean, I was excited.
Yeah, you do go explaining it, and I feel like that's like a lot of things when I'm demonstrating, because I can't show it, I have to like really think about how to actually explain it, so it's a good way.
Yeah.
Explain it.
Excitable puppy.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, it's like, people are like, oh, what do you mean? I was like, how springy do you want it for? If you're excitable puppy, then you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Cool. Happy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, drop and depth jumps. So let's go through. The reason, again, I just wanted to wait, obviously, Kate's been coaching me anyway, but just so we can just make sure, and everyone can coach each other, because some people are going to have a bit more experience with it than others, and just kind of play around with that. Let's go, we'll go depth jumps first. Actually, just go whichever one you want. Whichever one you want.
Yeah.
Just in terms of coordination, because we're bouncing around a little bit in terms of the grouping, if that's the case, what would we need to...
So it's playing around, so it's like why? What's happening? Obviously, ideally, if it's a real coordination problem, you're probably going to flag it up. I don't know why I looked at you then. I wasn't saying that you wasn't coordinated. I promise. I mean, I can't.
I was just going to say that what I've done before, like around the hips and that, when people jump in resistance band around it,
Yeah.
so you're putting a bit of lateral force on that.
A bit of guidance.
Yeah.
A bit of guidance from it.
I've seen people as well use resistance bands to help with the up phase.
Yep.
So they'll get them to hold on to resistance bands and do the same thing.
Yeah, so obviously we couldn't do it here again, but I've had it before. So yeah, imagine attaching them around here, band attached, so that again it's just giving that. Whoever, I can't remember who it was, whoever put these tape lines down here, was actually a godsend because it's something that I'll use.
Yeah.
So again, having a visual spot. Now, do we want eventually the athlete constantly just looking at their feet? No. But from a development perspective, we've now got a visual. Okay, we've got a visual. Okay. Now I might be forward and backward. Okay, but I've now got the visual of what's going on. Doesn't have to mean that's quite light, but you could have, I don't know, you could set up a circle. Yeah. Let's grab. Cool, Charlotte. Clever. Sorry, mate. Cool.
What do I have to do?
So I'm going to get you to do your pogos,
Yeah.
but I want you to stay within that. So.
Within the circle.
I'm starting big. I don't want to just assume.
Just straight up and down.
So yeah, so on there. Okay, so excitable puppy. Excitable puppy. Excitable puppy.
Like faster.
Yeah. That's it. Good. Spring. Okay. Yeah, you alright? Why are you looking at me?
Because I'm waiting for the next
Okay. Where your eyes look, what happens normally?
You go that way.
Yeah. So, as we said, we don't want athletes looking down here, but having a point. So, all right, David's head, David, having a point on the wall, having a zone set out. Okay, we're now in a zone, we've now got a point. Okay, I'm now focusing on that. Okay, what I can now do is I can turn the athlete away, I can either take this away, or I can make it smaller. It's a rough science, okay, but it's just thinking outside the box of things that ways to narrow it down. As I said, excitable puppy. Excitable puppy, you get that spring. Happy?
Yeah.
Yeah? Cool. Let's go.
I'm just thinking you could do the same thing for different joints as well. So you could make it more quad dominant, or if you put it in a press up position, you could do plyometric with the triceps and the shoulders.
Yeah. And again, it's like there's the science behind things, but then there's also coaches, the same as with yourself. You all know the same things, but you all will apply things slightly different, and you'll all apply it different based on who you've got standing in front of you.
Yeah, cool.
So it's having a bag of tricks, and then going, well, hang on a minute, David's not coordinated at all.
David?
David? Yeah. So actually, our approach there is going to have to be a lot different.
Yeah.
So let's say Josh, well, hang on a minute. So how do we go about it? So
Yeah, well, we were just saying that actually about kind of, especially like in team sports and that, we quite often don't land square.
Yeah.
You land with lateral falls, diving falls, jumping and that, giving each other a shove as you land in and stuff. And,
so this is it, and that's where the
We're
bilateral.
quite eager to demonstrate on you.
I bet he was, yeah. But that's where the bilateral and unilateral stuff comes from. Because again, we're not always going to have in a sport, in a gym, we can control the environment. On a sport we field, we can't always control the environment, but what we can do is we can control our preparedness and preparation of the body to cope with those external forces and factors, essentially. Cool. Let's just do some drop jumps and depth jumps then. Yeah? Who wants to go? You're going to coach me.
There's no step from downstairs?
No, so what we'll do, we can use... Yeah.
Or just do
Do there. Yeah. Obviously, just be conscious of the lights.
Let me see if I can get my head in to see.
I think you can. I think you can. I realised that come over like that and didn't move it. just a little bit.
Warm up a bit first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have we got a camera?
Don't headbutt the cables. Don't zap yourself.
I reckon I could. They need to go.
It reminds me of your wedding with that big chandelier.
Oh yeah, with me and Jordan as well. Yeah, I reckon headbutt that. Can I get
What if it's the last week we'll not been doing this in the gym? I've just been jumping around. If you'd come through the door, I'd have just been happy puppy.
That one was the depth one.
Yeah. So I always leave on there. So drop jump there is obviously.
And the drop one is just not as high, but it's faster.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So drop jump there. It's.
You got scared. You got scared.
Yeah.
That's the drop jump.
That's a drop jump. Depth that you go and then.
Okay. So is there a certain depth that you should go down to?
It's.
That's pretty cool.
That's a good point as well. So Katie said about the obviously on the depth jump, the depth that you allow the person to go to. So
I felt that through my whole body. My hand.
So again, it's playing around with it. Exact angles again without certain bits of kit, you're not gonna really be able to play around with. But you're gonna get a good feel. What you need to take into consideration is also the athlete, the body weight of the athlete. Okay, that's going to change things massively with regards to the heights that we're doing. Now, Elliot's obviously clearly a lot heavier than me. Therefore,
Oh, actually?
No.
How much you got?
About 82 kilos.
Oh yeah, a few kilos.
Yeah.
86.
So obviously we're all okay, but if you've got two separate athletes and you're playing around with different heights, well, Elliot, being heavier, it's going to feel a lot more through his joint.
Especially these calves, boy.
Oh!
They're singing.
On a higher jump than a lower jump. So if we're looking at ground contact times and we're limiting ground contact times to let's say 60, obviously the amount of touches and taps on the floor based on jumps, hops, whatever. Well, hang on a minute, if we're setting a target and it's heavier than me, that means realistically, if I'm hitting 60 ground contact times, are we wanting Elliot to be hitting around, limiting to about 45 because of the additional stress on him? Yeah. Bit of a tangent there.
So the lighter the person is, they can hit more depth, is that right?
They can probably hit a little more depth, but again, it's not, again, I think it's the exact degree. Don't quote me on it.
Yeah, lots of like lever length as well.
Yeah, so it's long femurs.
Their height and stuff.
Yeah.
Or all female.
You're all female. So yeah, you know, is it beneficial me coming to here? Well, no. Okay, we're going to figure out quite soon where that position is. Yeah. So gauge it by eye. That's in the situation that I'm in, I'm gauging things, alright, I know roughly, Katie, Charlotte, where things are at. It's very similar, but if we were to get a measuring tape out, you might have Josh's 5 degrees slightly more bent than, but visually you're not necessarily going to notice it as much. That makes sense. Okay, get the jump.
I'm gonna have to head off and I'm
See you,
All right.
I'll see you on Tuesday.
Okay. Like without doing it.
Okay, so,
Because I couldn't demonstrate this, so
Yeah.
how would I explain it to a patient?
Oh, okay.
so
Metaphors and movement cues.
yeah, so I mean, the way that I would probably then look at it maybe is look at so depth, as we said before, so the depth of the landing. So we are going to have a little bit more knee bend. I want you to step off of the box. I want you to land with a little bit more knee bend, so the same as our start position. So if we've got in our start position here, relatively speaking, aiming for the same angle, okay, and I want you just to focus solely on jumping as high as you possibly can. Then the other one,
Jumping as high as you can.
high as you
Yeah.
can for the depth, yeah? So we're getting the most depth and we're looking at the most height, yeah? And then drop jump, all I want you to do is happy puppy, but
Be
essentially,
as quick as
yeah,
possible.
happy puppy, we're stepping off of a box, a step, and that same movement or stimulus you created with a happy puppy, we're now doing again, but we're aiming to get a lot higher.
And then in the drop jump,
Yeah.
would you say to them, you know, you don't have to drop as low?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's ankle
Just
dominant,
want you,
knee
but
dominant.
do you explain to them about the whole triple extension thing?
So everything's going to be triple extension because that's kind of that takeoff phase. Once whatever jump we've completed, we're looking at just elongating the body.
But you want more triple extension in a drop jump, right? Like you want it to be for more time.
What do you mean?
Like, don't you want them to be in triple extension for a longer period of time in a drop
Yeah.
jump? Yeah, compared to the depth.
Realistically, probably milliseconds.
Okay.
But
So you
it's
wouldn't
more of
really
a-
bother.
No, I wouldn't really be bothered too much about how long they're in that position. Again, it's height. That peak height is going to probably be the same height. If you're in a triple extension for a little bit longer or not, you're going to have that peak height.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can see Elliot doing that.
The discussion. I could see your eyes. Like, he was watching me.
Okay, so you're going to
Cool
step
jokes.
onto the step for me, and then when you, do I say step off?
Yeah.
You're gonna
yeah.
step off, and then you're gonna, would you tell them to squat into it, or would you say you're gonna go into the skier's position that we discussed?
So, okay, tell you what, so basically, I'm going to get you, you're going to step off the box and I want you to get into that ski position. Now what I want you to do is I want you to do the same thing, I want you to step off the box, but you're going to get into the ski position and now you're going to jump.
As high as you can.
Then we go, right, now what we're going to do is we're going to step off, we're going to land into a ski position or a snapback position, we're now going to jump, and now I want you to jump as high as you possibly can. Naturally, there's going to be a little bit more force exerted because you've set now that height and progress it up like that. At the same time, you could also progress it. If I'm really landing awkwardly and you can see that I'm all over the place, you can progress it that way. Hang on a minute, okay, now we're going to step back off the box, just into a landing position.
Okay.
Yeah?
And then for the second one, I can say, I want you to step off the box and I want you to jump as quickly as possible.
I want you to land in that happy puppy position, i.e. that toe, that spring, and I want you to spring as soon as you touch the floor.
Okay.
The floor's lava. If you want to put it that way, the floor is lava.
Yeah, exactly. The floor is hot.
Yeah, floor is hot. I want that, you know, and I will sometimes clap, although it's going to be slight off time. It's like, okay, cool, step off. I want you to go as fast as you possibly can, and all I'm going to do is I'm watching you, and as you land, I'm slapping. Now, if you're taking off, if you're taking off,
Not a happy puppy anymore, man.
not happy puppy anymore.
I'm happy puppy, yeah.
And if you're taking off significantly slower than what my slap is, and I'm timing my slap with your feet touching the ground, and there's a clear visual then of that disparity in time.
Sweet.
Give it a do it.
Okay, so you're gonna step off and floor is lava and jump as quickly as possible.
Nice. Cool. Right. Okay, so again, how long have we got?
5 minutes, 10 minutes?
Yeah. Okay, so let's just look then at a couple more now plyometric exercises with regards to repeated jumps. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Joss as an example, as a test bed. Alright? Okay.
Splendid.
Yes.
Sorry, representing.
Represent. So, cool. So what I'm going to need to do now is we are going to look at, again, the list not exhausted to this. We've gone through drop and depth jumps. We're now going to look at some tuck jumps. Okay, so some repeated jumps. So all I'm going to get you to do now is on the spot. Okay, I want you to perform to start with one tuck jump for me. Focusing on landing afterwards as well. Okay, so now what we do is the same thing, but when we land, we're getting ready to go. So tuck, land. Okay, now 3 jumps consecutively. 3 tuck jumps, really focusing on that knee tuck, landing as quickly as you possibly can between jumps. As soon as your feet are touching that floor.
Right, and so am I going for the depth on that, or am I going for the...
I want you just to go as fast as you possibly can whilst bringing your knees up for it.
Okay.
No pressure. Okay. What did you feel? What's people think? What are we thinking?
I think, so like you can see that the intention was clear.
Yeah.
And then, what about arm timing? So like arm swing, would that come into it? So that you want to, when you land, do you want to time your land with that ski position and then throw, so you want to throw yourself up?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now, everything you did exactly what I told you to do. Okay, but now we can progress it. Yeah, so we can progress that movement. So now, again, we're going tuck jump, we're going really, really quick. We've got arm timing, we've got triple extension. Okay, we're coming up. Okay, that wasn't exactly a tuck, 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 tuck. Okay, all off over the place. But now I want you to do the same thing. Same thing, we're focusing on the tuck jump. Okay, I want more spring from the ground, I want a little bit more knee bend. One thing I noticed was landing. What did you feel with the landing? Was it quite abrupt?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah? Do you feel like there could have been a little bit of more absorption with the knee?
Possibly.
Maybe?
Yeah.
A little bit. This is again just us being picky.
Well, so sometimes with force absorption, I ask people to land as quietly as possible, so I know that their musculature is absorbing that force. Is that a good movement cue or no?
Yeah, so it can be. It can be. So if we're doing a single movement, we're looking at that land and that commitment to that.
Okay.
But now, again, as you said, like the happy puppy as well, we're looking to be springy.
Okay.
Same as like running. Sometimes with running with silent feet, so you're using that spring.
Yeah.
Yeah? Cool. 3 more tuck jumps. I'm sweaty, so I don't know.
Getting there. Okay. So...
That's the time and arm. It feels really weird now, doesn't it? Yeah? Okay?
Yeah.
Now, do your arm by your side for a tuck jump.
Oh god.
Just, you don't have to keep them rigid, but just allow your arms to do what they need to do.
It's hard, man.
Yeah? So, again, timing is critical.
Let me try that. Arms by your side, tuck them.
Just play on. You don't need to keep them too rigid, but... Okay. Now let's use the arm timing.
You forget how to touch.
Okay.
Right, you've never touched it
Yeah.
before.
But now, if I get you, I don't know, if you want to bring the camera around to this side, but now, if I get you
is streaming, man.
to take, to do a broad jump,
What, just forward as far as I can?
so as forward as far as you can.
Same movement you as a tuck jump. So just tuck and then...
I just want you just to jump as far forward as you can. Okay, and again. Do the same thing.
That's going to get competitive here.
Okay. What was the difference?
think your upper body, like Joseph's upper body and lower body seem better connected than mine. So mine was like a bit snappy from my knees.
What more of a it's a timing thing. And again, you're taking off, your legs come out quite wide. But all we're doing here, and all Josh did, the only difference was, again, he's got his timing right. He's gone into the position we've already spoken about, and now from there, he's used that force. Slightly different touch jumps. Now do the same thing. I want you to both, one each, and it come this end. Go first.
Or just
come this end.
Use that movement cue.
But now I want you to use that movement cue, both of you, and then I'll get you to keep your hand by your side. Cool. Right there.
I can see it, that helps, doesn't it?
Right, now both do the same thing. Keep your arms by your side. What did you notice about both of your heads?
I feel like I'm doing the work.
Yeah? Yeah? So you can use your head, you can use that additional bit of timing just to throw that out as a kind of that cue.
What's that drops out of still?
Huh?
No, it's a dolphin, isn't it?
Salmon.
No, yeah, that's the salmon, yeah.
Cool. Sweet. Right. Do you want to call it there out? So we don't get too much.
Got an outro, Steve.
An outro?
Yeah, thanks for watching the Stephen Patterson show. It's been a pleasure teaching you strength and conditioning. Next time we'll be talking about ACT with Charlotte Downing, who's going to be taking the next CPD session.
Yeah.
But you've got to say that then.
All I was going to say is I should have definitely bought deodorant when we did that.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you.